So, look, a lot of our own supporters say that to us, and I think it comes back to the chess game. People just don't grasp that it's a chess game, and people often fixate on their piece. Hang on a second, I'm a Cape Independence Party voter, so therefore I'm this, and no, but I'm a Freedom Front voter, and I'm that. And it's kind of like, hang on a second, you're a rook, or you're a bishop, or you're a knight, or you're a pawn, or but we're all pieces on the same board, and actually, we're on one side of this board, the ANC and the EFF are on the other side of that board. When it comes to elections, that's a two-way street. Are the DA using the independence movement, or is the independence movement using the DA, or actually are we just all on the same team? I would argue we're all on the same team, but I mean, how do people think that we got people to make this announcement? And I think you can think, look, the DA are obviously trying to be very careful of how they word this. So let's just look at that. So we've got an announcement that the DA probably would have preferred not to have made, which is why they're being so careful around their wording of it, but they've made it in the run-up to an election. I think you can understand that's because the independence movement, with its 1.4 million followers in the Western Cape, who account for an extraordinarily large part of the electorate and the majority of the DA and these other parties' voters, want Cape independence. So actually, this is a victory for the political pressure placed by the people of the Western Cape on the parties, and Cape independence is led by people rather than parties. The parties are responding. So no, I don't think we're being used at all. I think we've been extraordinarily astute, and we've used our power as people and as voters in the run up to the election to apply pressure on the dominant political party and get something that we wanted. Of course, after the election, the DA can do whatever they want. I think it would be extraordinarily foolhardy for them to do that. I don't believe for one second, having spoken to them, because they're as committed to devolution as we are. That's what people have to understand. They might not think that Cape independence at this point in time is the solution, and that's only because they don't want to give up on their voters and the rest of the country at this point. That's the only thing that's different between us. They are absolutely as committed as we are to getting a better deal for the people of the Western Cape. So no, they're not going to. But I mean, for all political parties, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It would be a very foolhardy thing of a political party to do that, and you could only pull that stunt once.
So basically, with the DA support, it's now basically guaranteed there will be a referendum. So when do you think will it happen? Is 2 years' time a realistic timetable?
So it's really a guess. At the end of the day, how do I know? My guess is 18 months to 24 months, but I think about 18 months. The real unknown is how do they, because obviously before we can have a referendum, we have to sort of tidy up this referendum legislation. The right to call a referendum exists in the Constitution, but the Referendums Act has never been updated since 1992, and therefore is now unconstitutional. That needs to be tidied up, and that is the bill that the DA have brought before Parliament, the Electoral Commission Amendment Act, and that is effectively what AfriForum are threatening to do in terms of taking Parliament to the Constitutional Court and forcing them to pass that bill. This announcement in some ways perhaps has changed that game a little bit, because what we don't know is what the passage of that bill through Parliament is going to be. And I think there was a very good chance in the early days that the ANC would have just let that bill pass, thinking that the DA weren't going to call a referendum on Cape independence. They don't have to worry about that. I think that probably now has changed. So now this is going to be a very, very interesting situation, and that's the great unknown. The ANC ultimately cannot prevent that bill being passed in some form or other. It's the Constitution requires it, and I'm absolutely certain that AfriForum will be successful in their application to the Constitutional Court, because it's a black and white issue. It's clear. But obviously the ANC are going to understand the significance. So what we don't know is, are they going to try and have that fight first of all in Parliament and just delay? Perhaps they even try to change the Constitution and remove it. I think that would be really foolhardy. So I'm not expecting that. I don't think they're that naive. They would really make a sort of martyr complex, and that would be that. Or do they actually think, look, what, we'll just choose to fight another day. Let's just let this bill pass. Referendums in South Africa aren't binding, so therefore it's fine. We're we're not going to panic. We're going to let that bill pass. We're going to let the referendum play out, and at the end of it, it isn't really going to matter because the referendum won't be binding in the first place. I don't know, and how they react is clearly going to affect that timeline. If they choose to drag this out, maybe it becomes 30 months or 24 months as opposed to 18 months. Actually, yeah, it's conceivable it could be quicker, and they just wave the thing through and say, look, actually, our best bet of getting a result here is having the referendum as soon as possible before the other side can get organised. I don't know, but our guess is 18 months.
So the primary reason probably for soliciting AfriForum support and taking it to the Constitutional Court is obviously you can't appeal that. That's the end of the case. So now they will have to pass the legislation if the Constitutional Court says they have to.
Sure. Well, look, so I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, I presume that actually, I think that'll be great. But my guess is only the Constitutional Court could hear this. I mean, it literally is a matter of the constitution versus the law. I can't imagine that any other court would have the jurisdiction to do that, and forcing the government to comply with the Constitution because the legislation is defective. I presume can only go to the Constitutional Court. But I speak under correction. I'm not an expert on that.
So if there's now a referendum, what do you think the DA's position will be on that referendum? Will they be against the yes vote? That's to say they won't support independence. Will they be supporting a no vote? Or do you think they will take the conservative, the option that the Conservatives took during Brexit and say, every man for himself, or every man and woman for himself. You decide what you want to do. What do you think the DA is going to do? Because obviously that's very important. They have a lot of money behind them. If they support the referendum, if they support the yes vote, I believe that's game over.
Well, so I don't know, but my guess is that they'll allow people to have a vote of conscience, which you're talking about. And I think we know that the majority of DA supporters support Cape Independence. We know there's a very sizable number of people within the DA that support Cape Independence. And my guess is that I think they've got two choices: that they either can be torn apart by it, which clearly isn't what they'll do, or they'll allow the two camps to emerge and just respect the democratic process. So I suspect what we're going to see, and exactly as you say, as it played out for the Conservative Party in the UK, is we're going to see the two camps emerge within the DA, and one camp is going to be leading the Remain vote, and the other camp is going to be remaining the Leave vote, that will play out in a democratic process, and the DA will just respect the process, and I think that's the right way to go. I think. Look, the DA is nervous at this point in time over how this is going to be. How it's going to be perceived outside of the Western Cape, and I think actually this is an issue that's going to disappear. Yeah, our working theory at this point in time, and we want to try and do some more research on this, is that amongst people outside of the Western Cape, and specifically amongst DA voters, there's actually an extraordinary amount of support for Cape Independence, because and we're seeing this more and more and more, and we're seeing interesting, the big growth in supporters for Cape Independence is coming amongst black and coloured voters, and I think obviously it's been so long that people try desperately to paint this as a kind of a thing of race, which it just so isn't. We have to understand this is an ideological battle. This is a battle between people who want a broadly socialist system and some form of African nationalism, which is what the ANC and the AFF want, against people who want a non-racial society and genuine non-racialism, and some form of a market economy, albeit a social market economy or whatever. So those we know that those ideologies stretch right across racial bounds. So there are people in the rest of South Africa who are saying, hell, what, I just do not identify with this government, and the fact that there is going to be this new country that is going to have all of the values that I aspire to is totally exciting for people in the rest of South Africa. Most of those people are voting for the DA, and I think think some of those people, we've seen it. We've already got semigration, a massive amount of semigration going on. There are a whole load of people that saying, if you can any day, there's not, you can go any day on social media and just say literally scores of people saying, if the Western Cape gets independent, I am moving there. We know that the diaspora is going to come back en masse, and people mustn't think that all those people are going to be from specific races. They are going to be people who ideologically, and we're going to have this ideological homeland in the heartland, whatever, like in the Western Cape, and some people will move there, and other people may not move there, but actually they'll be very glad it's there, because actually it's going to it's going to be a foothold for the ideologies that they believe in next door, that is basically going to really empower them, even if they remain in South Africa. And I have often used the example of the Western Cape as being, in the same way as Jewish people view Israel. I believe that the people who have this market orientated and non-racial mindset will see the Western Cape as their ideological homeland, and actually their ally in the region, even if they don't live there. Not all Jewish people live in Israel. Not all free marketers and non-racialists are going to live in the Western Cape, but they're going to be very glad that it's there.